Hi, happy May. So we'll take a look at what's going on with the trees today. And a lot of change since the last video that we made. You can see here are the river birch leaves, and they've come fully out of the buds. The bud scales are just a little some of them have actually fallen off. So those are the leaves, and you can see they're toothed. It's one simple leaf that's very toothed, kind of triangular-ish. And then also I wanted to show you some of the flowers. So there are male flowers that have fallen to the ground. I just picked this off the ground. So this was full of pollen. The pollen has probably flown mostly away in the wind. And the male flowers of many trees, once their pollen is gone, they just fall on the ground. So if you see something like this, like a catkin flower on the ground, it's probably a male flower. Here's the magnolia flower, and you can see that the petals are kind of drooping and they'll fall off. And you've got all the stamens, the male part of the flower. This is a hermaphroditic flower. So it's got the male and female parts, the female in the middle and the male around that. So the petals will fall and the male parts will fall. And then you can see that's a later stage where petals have fallen, the male parts are falling. And this one, they've already fallen. And then the female part is hopefully pollinated and turning into a fruit and seeds. Here's the ginkgo tree, and those leaves have come out. I think they're really beautiful, kind of like fan-like leaves. I think I mentioned before that the name for ginkgo in Chinese means duckfoot. So you might see that in the leaves. And then you can see the flowers. So ginkgos are either male or female. You don't have both on one tree, and the flowers are either male or female. So this is a spruce tree, and you can see the cones, the female cones. These beautiful kind of purple cones are showing up, and they'll get a lot bigger. They'll probably get about like that big. And so conifers have male and female flowers separate. But I just read from the Arnold Arboretum that they've got a spruce tree that every once in a while this happens, that has hermaphroditic cones that have both male and female. So if you go over to the Arnold Arboretum spruce collection around now, May, you'll be able to see that with this one tree. So I don't know if you remember those really big buds that I mentioned that would probably have really big flowers or leaves. And now those buds have opened, and this is a horse chestnut tree. You can see this is one leaf with leaflets. So it's considered a compound leaf, a divided compound leaf. And it's palmately divided. So the different leaflets kind of form like a hand shape. And the flowers are here. So those are buds. They haven't opened up yet. They've got really cool flowers when they come out. So maybe you can take a look at this tree later. This tree, we didn't look at it before, I believe, but it's got some flowers I wanted to point out. So these are also hermaphroditic flowers. They've got the female part in the middle, pistil, and the stamens, the male part, are tiny pairs. They come from China, and they're planted all over cities. Really common city tree. This is a flowering cherry tree living up to its name. It's an Asian type of cherry. And you can see the finely toothed leaves and beautiful flowers. So here's the ash we looked at before, and it had those pretty big buds and big leaf scars, and there are the big leaves. So that's one leaf. It's got leaflets, and unlike the horse chestnut that has palmate leaves, compound leaves, this has pinnate compound leaves. So it's one leaf stem with leaflets coming out the sides. So these are ash flowers that have kind of gone by a bit. And then there are these other parts that ash can get a fungus that makes its flowers kind of deformed and stay on all year. And I just found out about this, so I think these might be that when they're kind of like dark brown and large, and you see them really early in the spring. It may just be that they're last year's flowers that had a fungus and kind of stuck on the tree. You can see how different that is from these flowers here. So if you remember the large red buds that we looked at in our last video, and you can see kind of pinkishness right there and leaves that came out of the linden. So this is a linden tree, and it's got heart-shaped leaves with a little bit of like fine toothing. Beautiful tree, and very common in city streets. So sweet gum, I think, is really cool in so many ways. First of all, they've got these neat kind of like star-like leaves. It's palmately lobed, so it's not compound. It doesn't have separate leaflets. This is one leaf with lobes, kind of in the shape of a hand. And then the flowers that are just kind of, they've come out of the bud scales, and the male and female flowers are separate but on the same tree. And you can still see some of the fruits from last year up here. And hopefully, if those flowers get pollinated, you'll be seeing some more of the sweet gum fruits. So the elm leaves have come out of their buds, and you can see the toothed edge and also the difference in the two sides. So they're not totally symmetrical. You've got this kind of angle where one side comes up higher than the other, and that's characteristic of elm. And then you can see the fruits. So the flowers were pollinated, and there are the fruits with seeds. So maybe you remember these beautiful red flowers that were here before. This is the red maple, and those flowers were pollinated, and some of them are just beginning to turn into fruits, seeds, and some of them are further along. And then you've got the leaves. So red maple, maples in general are palmately lobed, but red maple, instead of having like 5 or 7 different lobes, it usually just has 3. And that's one way to tell that you're looking at a red maple tree. So here's the Norway maple, and there's the palmately lobed leaves, but these ones have 5 lobes, and they're kind of very wide at the base. And then there are the fruits. So maple's fruits are called samaras. So those are samaras, and if you're like me, you may have taken them apart and stuck part of it on your nose when you were a kid, or let them fly like helicopters down, because that's what they do. They disperse by flying down like a helicopter in the wind and finding a new place to grow. Those are the flowers. The flowers are all over the ground, the ones that haven't turned into fruits, that maybe they didn't get pollinated or something happened that made them fall instead of turning into a fruit. I think we looked at this one before, but they're on the city streets a lot. So sometimes you see a tree with leaves that are kind of similar to the elm, but they don't have that asymmetrical base. And the leaves are maybe a little bit smaller, narrower. This is a Zelkova tree. So this is a dogwood tree, and one of the interesting things about the flowers is that these petals are actually bracts. So they're leaves that have been evolved to be like petals, because the actual petals are tiny. Those are each a bud of a flower, And when they open up, there'll be a little tiny flowers here, but with these big bracts that act like petals to advertise the flowers to pollinators. The leaves have also come out, and dogwood has something kind of unique about its leaves. The veins curve around to be parallel to the edge of the leaves. It's maybe a little hard to see right now. When they come out more, you'll be able to see that more. And then it's still got that opposite growth. So the buds, the leaves, branches are all going opposite. So this one is a native dogwood. So this is Cornus florida. It's a dogwood that could grow in our forest. And you can tell the difference between this and the other. The fruit is very different, and the bark. If you look at the bark is kind of like alligator skin or something. It's got those small kind of plates coming out.